Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Inspiring Cycling Experiences by Sarah Martens. My name is Frederike Demmers and I am the moderator of today. And first I would like to say welcome to our presenter, Sarah Martens, who you can see besides me. And also welcome to our participants. We're happy to see that we have a very diverse public. You come from 10 different countries and we like that very much. First, I would like to introduce Sarah to you. Sarah works for Mobile 21 for about 15 years now, and she's specialized in the behavior of change and communications, and she has gained experience in several high-profile European mobility projects like EPOM, CIVITAS, Vanguard, and allinx Plus. And within CIVITAS Vanguard, she was responsible for organizing trainings and webinars. And in the allinx Plus, she was the topic expert for cycling. And she's also the main editor of the EPOM update on mobility management, and also the moderator of the CIVITAS thematic group on mobility management. And today she is going to present some of the most successful and inspiring cycling measures of the CIVITAS cities. Sarah, the floor is yours, so you can start your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Frederike, and welcome to you all. I'm going to start with a very, very short introduction on CIVITAS. Probably a lot of you already know the program, but in short, for those of you who don't, CIVITAS is an EU program for funding cities. So it's really an initiative for cities, by cities. So cities are supported to implement integrated packages of measures. So that's very, very important in CIVITAS, that cities adopt an integrated approach to sustainable mobility. It was launched in 2000 and it started with a first round of cities who were funded to implement their sustainable mobility measures. You can see them here on screen. Then a second phase started in 2005, so additional cities were funded. We had a third phase after that, 2008, if I can see it correctly. And then for the moment, we are in the fourth phase of cities being funded for their sustainable mobility projects. Apart from the funding of cities, CIVITAS also has a European network where all cities who engage themselves for sustainable mobility can join. It's called the CIVITAS Forum Network. And we also have national networks where cities come together to learn from each other in their own language. So that gives a lower barrier to people who might have some trouble following everything in English. Now, recently, Vitoria-Gasteiz, one of the CIVITAS cities from 2008 to 2012, was in the news because they really managed to increase their cycling share. They even almost doubled it. And I think, well, part of it will definitely be explained by their participation in CIVITAS. So in 2011, when CIVITAS was still ongoing, they had a cycling share of 6.8%. And in 2004, it was already 12.3%. And they have the very ambitious target to make it 15% by 2020. And that's actually, for the moment, they have the highest cycling share in the whole of Spain. Now, a very important reason why they have been able to realize this is because of the important political support that there is for cycling in the city. So they have a master plan for cycling, cyclist mobility, and bike promotion is also an integrated part of their sustainable mobility policy. And I think that's also one of the key features in CIVITAS, that you really have this engagement in the city on the political level, but also on the administrative level, to really get things moving and changing things in the city. Now, there are actually a lot of different themes in CIVITAS, and ideally, if you want to come to an integrated approach, you should have some measures in each of these categories. If you're interested in one or more of these themes in particular, then CIVITAS has created thematic groups. So Friederike already explained that I am the moderator of the group on mobility management. I will share the link with you in the chat box if you're interested. And the idea here is that you can really follow the news and the activities of CIVITAS on one specific theme, which I think is very interesting. The trouble is, when we're talking about cycling, it doesn't really, it's not really one separate theme in CIVITAS. So I try to give you the overview here. Cycling is really part of a lot of different CIVITAS themes. So in that respect, if you're interested in the topic of cycling, yeah, you might have to go shop here and there in the different thematic categories. For the purpose of this webinar, I'll focus mainly on mobility management, car-independent lifestyles as well, because that's also part of the wider definition of mobility management. Because I think for the audience that we have here today, that will be the most interesting. So in the theme of car-independent lifestyles, there are a lot of measures on public bicycles and bike sharing. In total, in the whole CIVITAS initiative, so all the projects that have been funded, there have been 21 different measures on bike sharing in 19 different cities. A very basic example is the one from Aalborg in Denmark. They implemented a coin deposit system. So if I remember correctly, that's a second generation system. It's open to residents, commuters, and tourists. And of course, because they're a quite northern country, it's not available all year round, but it was available from early spring to autumn. So that's an example of what has been realized already quite early in the CIVITAS initiative. The city of Ghent in Belgium focused a lot on the topic of theft because they are a university city. I'm not saying that all students are thieves, but bike theft is quite a problem in our university cities. And what they did is they developed this rental bike system for students so that they can get a bike for a reasonable price. But in order to avoid theft of all these bicycles, these bikes had a very unique frame, so they were very recognizable. They were engraved with a unique code. And they also built secured sheds where these bikes can be safely stored. And they also implemented a bait bike. So what's this? It's a traceable bike that is being left in the public domain, probably unlocked. And the idea is that it should get stolen. And because it's traceable, you will be able to trace the thief. So that's a bait bike. Currently, in the CIVITAS projects that are going on now, there are also some measures on bike sharing. A lot of them are happening in the Dynamo project. CIVITAS Dynamo has recently also published a brochure on all the bike sharing measures that they developed. So you can see the cover of the publication on the right of the slide here. So one of the cities is actually combination of 3 neighboring cities, Gdańsk, Gdynia, and Sopot in Poland. They are working together. They're not yet implementing a bike sharing system, but they have done a feasibility study because actually the city of Sopot already had a very small scale bike sharing pilot, which did not go well. Why? Well, because the scope of the project was quite limited, so they didn't have a lot of stations, they didn't cover a big area, and probably it wasn't useful enough for the users. So that is why these 3 cities really want to have a very systematic approach, really think about it very well, so that they can launch a system that actually will work and that will be useful for the user. And one of the aspects that they have to take into account is that they have quite a lot of hilly terrain. So they will have to think about how can we make sure that we motivate people to cycle uphill, so that we don't have to move all the bicycles from downhill to uphill, because of course that would be a lot of effort. In Malaga, in Spain, they've implemented a system with 400 bikes and 20 stations. It's already operational. I'm going to say something more about it later on. And in Palma, also in Spain, they extended their bike sharing system. So they already implemented one before the CIVITAS project started. And they first had this 1-year pilot really to evaluate the system. So they didn't just open it right away. They had this test period where they could really see what the difficulties were, what the barriers were, and work on it before they launched it to the rest of the city. And so in CIVITAS, they supplemented it. They installed another 150 bikes, another 10 stations to expand the scope of the system. And then there's also Koprivnica in Croatia and Aachen in Germany, who are working on a pedelec rental system. So in Aachen, it's, for instance, for the university. And in Koprivnica, it's actually integrated in a normal bike sharing system, so a system with normal bikes that already existed. And these systems work together. So, of course, out of all these CIVITAS projects, they have been evaluated. So we also have some lessons learned from these cities. Of course, what is very important is that in your country you have a favorable legal framework to organize it very efficiently. I already talked about the problem of scale. If it's not large enough, people won't think it's useful. But of course, you cannot implement a full-blown system in the whole city and every suburb at once. So it's important to look for a scalable system where you can add on in subsequent phases. Bicycle redistribution is quite, it can pose quite a problem, because if some stations are mainly used to take bikes and don't receive a lot of bikes that are returned, then you will have to redistribute the bikes a lot. And often, yeah, the municipality only has diesel or gasoline vehicles. So the redistribution can actually add to the CO2 emissions and other pollutants. So it's really something to think about in advance, how you can limit this. Of course, schemes need to be tailored to users. You really have to figure out what do they need, where do they need it, when do they need it. And access to it should be as simple and user-friendly as possible, because if you pose a lot of barriers, obviously less people are going to use it. The CIVITAS cities also underline the importance of promotion campaigns for this system, so that people really are motivated to use it, and of course that they know that it exists and how it works. I'm going to show you an example of that later on. It can also be very useful to use the social networks. For instance, you can create a Facebook page for your bike sharing system and really create a kind of community feeling around it. You can launch Twitter hashtag, so that people can talk about it on the social media. And of course, it would be very, very useful to have an app, so a smartphone app, or also a website app where people can see where there are bikes available, where the empty stations are, also where the full stations are. If you're cycling and you want to leave your bike somewhere, that you can see, oh, I shouldn't go to that station because it's already full. I'm going to get the next station. So that's in short what has been done on bike sharing. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, okay. We do have already 2 questions in the chat room. And the first one is from René. He says, you ask, are students willing to pay for a rental bike?
Well, not much. Maybe it depends from city to city, but the way it is in Belgium, most of them get their allowance from their parents just to pay for their room and to get some food, and anything that is left they want to spend on partying and drinking. Okay, I'm talking in cliches again, but no, I think it's impossible to charge a lot for a rental bike. So but that also poses a problem. If you offer a cheap bike, then people will be less inclined to take care of it. So there, yeah, you really have to find a balance, or you can look for a system where you recycle old abandoned bikes, for instance, so that it's very low cost. Or you can go to a system of really sturdy bikes, theft-proofed bikes like in Ghent, but then of course you'll need to invest a lot, and you cannot expect the students to pay for all the expenses that you've made.
Okay, and what's the biggest group to focus on? Is it the commuter or the tourists? What is mostly, what are the cities?
Well, it's of course it depends on the aim that you have as a city. So in very touristic regions, it can be a choice to really focus on the tourists. So with short-term subscriptions, for instance, so people can easily use their credit card to buy a 1 or 2 day subscription. But for instance, I know in the city of Barcelona, they have not made this choice, and as a tourist, you cannot rent a bikes. Well, maybe they are changing it, or they have changed it. But last time I was there, I was not able to hire one. So yeah, it's really a choice that you make. I can say that in I have to make sure that I say it correctly, Malaga or Palma. I think it was Palma. They have this long-term subscription, and they're also campaigning to get people with an annual subscription. But they also wanted to open up the system for tourists. So they introduced a 1 or 2 day ticket, but they see that still the bikes are mainly used during the weekdays. So probably they are being used for commuting.
Yeah.
So you can have an aim and a choice as a city, but what the users do, well, it's not always that easily predictable. So you can try and find out by surveying very well and doing market research.
Before you start with a project like that. Obviously. Yeah, and an additional question from René. It says, do you have any results? Are the numbers available on how successful the projects are?
Yeah, most of the cities evaluate these systems in terms of how many users they have. I think in Palma they have 17,000 subscribers, and each bike is being used about 8 times a day. So I think that's quite a good result. I have heard some other bike sharing systems that have usage of the bikes about 3 times a day. So I think 8 times is not a bad result.
No.
Yeah. Of course, in principle, all of these numbers, all of these results should be on the CIVITAS website. So if you go and look to the demonstration measures, as they're called, you go and look for the bike sharing measures, you can read for each city which results they have obtained.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. A question from Mario. What role can associations play in the CIVITAS project, as it is a project for cities, for cities?
Well, in the projects that are being funded, associations can be local partner in the project to support the city. And we see that a lot, that local NGOs, for instance, take on the role to organize the public participation, or they do the campaigning, or they do very specific community projects that are part of the CIVITAS project. And of course, associations are also free to join the thematic groups and learn from the CIVITAS experiences.
Okay. I don't see any questions in the chats, but if there are some more. Oh, René, lessons learned, what are the do's and don'ts for other cities?
Yeah. Well, I think the previous slide that I showed sums up the main lessons learned. So yeah, probably some cities will have additional insights, but of course it would lead me too far to present them all for each city separately. But again, yeah, I think the scalability is very important. Thinking about redistribution and what the users actually need. I'd say those are the three main messages before you start. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, go on with your presentation then. Oh, sorry, just the one question pops up. Of any of the lessons successful schemes, what went wrong?
Yeah, sometimes I think a lot of the times it's a matter of not enough stations, or maybe stations in the wrong places. Mm-hmm. So if people feel, okay, I can take a bicycle near my home, but I cannot use it to go to the shop because there's no station there, or I cannot use it to go to work, then of course they won't use it. I think another problem is that when a city does a lot of investments to build a system like this, they also want to reclaim their costs, and of course, yeah, pricing is a difficult issue. Most bike sharing schemes offer the first half an hour for free, but they also require people to buy a subscription. So it can be, for instance, 30 euro for a whole year. But of course, for people who want to try it out and they don't know yet if they're going to use it for a whole year, that might be a very big barrier. They might think it's too much. Yeah. So that's also something that you need to take into account. How much are people willing to pay? Technical issues, so too much trouble with the redistribution, or bikes that break a lot or get stolen. It has happened before that the technology just wasn't right. Yeah. So yeah, I think there are so many things to take into account. But the good thing is, well, a lot of cities have tried it out. So you have these experiences in CIVITAS, but also in other European projects. So.
Okay, and Paula also adds, how did the cities decide on the location of stations?
Yeah, well, I don't know for each city separately. Sometimes they just focus on big places of employment and universities, for instance. Mm-hmm. Or what they often do is they begin with the city center, so the most dense part of the city where the most of the functions are, and they try and look for this network where you have a maximum of 5 minutes walking distance, for instance, between each station. And then, of course, you have to go and see where you actually have room to install these stations. Depending on the type of technology that you choose, you also have to have an electricity connection. You need to have the public space, so you have to decide, is there a square where we can put them? Is there a large pavement where we can put a station? Can we maybe take away a parking spot for a car to build a station? So I think it's a very difficult exercise, because on the one hand you have this ideal of this network of stations that are not too far apart, but on the other hand you have to take care of where are the main places where people want to be, plus where do we have the room to install these stations. Yeah. Okay. I think it's an art in itself.
Yeah, probably. Maya asked the question, is there a connection between the successful schemes and the local cycling network, road safety?
Yeah, I think that's also one of the reasons why some cities postpone their decision to implement bike sharing. For instance, the Polish cities that I talked about, they invested in a good cycling network first.
Okay.
So they had the bad experience from Sopot. Plus, they thought, well, let us invest in these cycling connections first, and then when we have the start of a decent network, let's do it right and let's implement a usable bike sharing system.
Yeah. Okay. And Thomas, he asked, is there any connection between projects going good and cycling lanes, geometry, distribution, and characteristics?
Wow.
I think what he means is a little bit the same as Mario asked, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I would say I have the example of Malaga in mind now. I've been there in the beginning of the year. So as I explained, they installed their system now during CIVITAS, and well, they actually have a very long cycling path going through the city. But it's actually only the start of a cycling network, and they didn't wait for this complete cycling network to be finished to install the bike sharing system, and it works there. So yes, you need a good cycling infrastructure and a certain level of road safety, but on the other hand, by getting people cycling, it can also just make cycling visible in the city and also increase the safety, because car drivers get used to people cycling around. So yeah, it's a very difficult balance there.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Go further with your presentation. Next questions will be answered at the end of your presentation.
All right. So marketing and campaigns then. There have really been a lot of campaigns in CIVITAS. It's actually one of the most implemented measures of the CIVITAS project. This is the bike sharing campaign that I wanted to show you. It's from Ljubljana in Slovenia. And when they were going to implement their bike sharing system, they made these really colorful t-shirts to promote the bike sharing system. And they actually took some of the bikes that were going to be in the system, and they just hung them over the streets. They put them on top of bus stops. So I think it's a really playful way to announce the arrival of the bikes that will come shortly to Ljubljana. And I think it also gives people something to talk about. Oh, have you seen the bikes hanging on the street? So I think this is a really nice example. And it uses a technique, if I may call it like that, that is very effective in campaigns, is the element of surprise. You don't expect a bicycle hanging in the air, obviously. So. Okay. Ghent has also done a lot for campaigns for cyclists. For instance, the picture in the middle, it was in a period of the year where it was already quite cold, and I wanted to do a campaign to thank the people that are already cycling. Because that's something, of course, that you also need. You don't only have to convince the people that are already cycling, but you want to keep the ones that are cycling motivated. And so under the motto, every cyclist counts, they handed out free gloves, which is, of course, very timely, very good idea when it's cold, that you would hand out free gloves. The picture on the right is a Cycle Chic campaign. I think most of you know the concept, so it's really about making these very nice photographs of people on their bikes in order to show the rest of society that cycling people are in fact very normal people. They're not all lycra wearing sportsmen. And yeah, you can use these posters. I think in Ghent they were printed almost in real life proportions and put on the streets so that it was really visible to the rest of the citizens. And then the picture on the left is a leg massage. So Ghent organized a free breakfast for cyclists and a free leg massage to thank the people that are cycling. Then Odense in Denmark. They are also very, very active. I will tell something more about them later on. They did this bike trailer campaign in kindergartens because, of course, people, when they become parents, then they often feel obliged to take a car because they think, well, you cannot carry a little baby on a bike. And of course, in the first few months, that might be true, but then after that, there are a lot of systems to take your kids on a bike. So that's why they promoted bike trailers. They also had a special trial offer for people that commute in the Cycle to Work campaign, because there some people say, yeah, I cannot bike to work because I have too much stuff to carry with me. And there, of course, a bike trailer can also be a solution. Or for people who first want to take their kids to school and then cycle on to work, that's also a solution. And they also had this special lottery where they had scan posts. There were this kind of pillars with scanners in them by the side of the road. And cyclists had a special card that they could scan. And so they, when they were cycling, they actually could win prizes from this lottery. So that was in Odense. Then in Venice, in Italy, they really focused on schools. Of course, there are a lot of other examples of school projects as well. This one was called the Abici project. It was for elementary schools. And it was also about giving children a sense of ownership of their area. Because if they're always in the backseat of a car, they don't really feel like the street is theirs. The street is for cars, and children, yeah, they are either at home or at school, but the area is not theirs. They studied their routes to school by bike. So they really looked into the routes, and they also had bike maintenance lessons so that they could take care of their own bikes. And obviously there was also road safety education, which is very important when you work with children. And then a very, very successful example from CIVITAS is the European Cycling Challenge. Of course, it did not start as a European Cycling Challenge. Bologna in Italy introduced a Bologna bike city program in 2011, and they had this challenge where cyclists tracked their cycle kilometers, and then in the end they could win prizes. There was a closing event. It was very nice, and the city of Bologna thought, well, we really have something here, you know what, we're going to open it up to the rest of Europe. And that's how the European Cycling Challenge was born. In 2012, 7 cities participated from different European countries. And now in 2015, there were actually 39 cities participating, 26,000 cyclists participating. They've cycled 2 million kilometers, and it will take place again next year. So maybe even your city can join next year. So, and you can see in the images on the slide below. So on the left, you have how the way it started with the Città in Bici project. Then it became the European Cycling Challenge. And you see that you have Team Gävleborg there from Sweden. You have a poster from Bristol. So the cities are really making their own local campaign of it, but you have this European dimension of competing to other cities. We actually have someone from Bologna in the audience, so if I say something wrong or if I forget something, he will definitely correct me, I suppose. This is the app that they are using. It's called Endomondo. It tracks the kilometers that you cycle, and this allows the people from the European Cycling Challenge to make a leaderboard, so really to have this kind of competition showing which city has cycled the most kilometers already. A very, very nice result that comes out of using a tracking app is that as a city you have data on where your cyclists are cycling. And so what you see here is a heat map from the city of Bologna, and it can give you a lot of confirmation on where the main axes of cycling traffic are, but it can also show where you could do some extra investments, maybe reveal some axes that you hadn't thought about. So this is actually very, very useful information, and it's also something very nice to disseminate to the public, because it really makes cycling visible in this very almost artful image. Okay, another example of how you can use tracking and campaigning in one and the same intervention is the use of bike counters. I think this one is from the city of Odense in Denmark. So on the one hand, it counts the number of cyclists passing by, so that's very useful information for the city. But on the other hand, it also makes cycling very visible to other people. So it has a motivating effect, also showing that cycling is actually a very normal thing to do, and a lot of people are doing it. Okay, so for lessons learned on mobility management, well, children are the future. That's this cliche that's often mentioned, but it's true, obviously. So we see a lot of CIVITAS projects that have an initiative with children in schools, because if you learn it very young, if you are even in kindergarten or before, if you're transported on a bike from a very young age on, you will probably keep on doing it. Well, when you're always stuck in the back seat of a car, yes, that's a very hard habit to break when you're older. Then another important lesson learned in mobility management and campaigning is try to engage local businesses, either as workplaces who can reach a lot of employees, but also maybe local shops that can give incentives for cycling. Other institutions obviously can be important allies, and local champions. So we see that some cities try to get their mayor on a bike, or they ask some local celebrity, and that can really have a big motivating effect. And it can also help to attract attention to your project, because people already receive so much information, so many messages, and if it's coming from a well-known person, obviously that can attract attention. Of course, the same thing here as for bike sharing. You should have a certain level of safe cycling infrastructure. That doesn't mean you have to have separate bike lanes everywhere, but people should at least have a sense of safety when they go on a bike, especially when we're talking about getting children on a bike. Then make use of European Mobility Week. So we see that a lot of CIVITAS cities have conducted campaigns and organized events during Mobility Week that really helps to create a dynamic in the city. You should communicate a lot about your measures, not just organizing separate campaigns, but also when you open a new bus service, or when you have an additional bike lane, really get it out there and build this common vision of where you want to go as a city, how cycling will benefit the city, how cycling is part of your city's future. And then, well, people often think that campaigns are nice extras just to get some visibility for what you've done, but campaigns actually reinforce the effects of other measures. So if you build a new cycle lane, but yeah, people that never take that road don't even know that it has been opened or it's there, then obviously they won't take a little detour to use your new bike route that you've created. Yeah, I've talked about getting the attention of people that already hear so many messages. You can do it with a famous person, but of course also with incentives and other creative ideas. So the element of surprise I've talked about. Incentives can be monetary rewards. You could say everyone who tracks their cycling trip with an app gets a 5-cent reward for each trip, for instance. Or you could say, well, everyone who joins a campaign has a chance of winning a prize. It doesn't always have to be monetary. Then gamification is a very hot topic now. It means using game elements in your projects. What we saw with the European Cycling Campaign is a bit of an example of that, because it uses these scoreboards, these leaderboards, ranking of participants. Some campaigns also have this website where you register and you can make a profile with the profile pictures. So these social media elements can also be considered as gamification. But of course, a very important aspect here is that you should really think if it's useful. Because what we see now is that a lot of campaigners think, oh, we need to have rankings and leaderboards, and people have to make this social media profile. But if people don't think it's added value, they won't use it. So you really have to think carefully about it. And then, of course, a very important last lesson learned is it takes time. So if you conduct one campaign and you're going to evaluate the impact of that one campaign, yeah, obviously it's very hard to find a tangible impact of something as abstract as a campaign. So in my opinion, and I think that the CIVITAS experience shows this too, is that you really need continued efforts, and these campaigns, these communications, yeah, they add to the general awareness of people. And together with the infrastructure and the other measures, the more hard measures, they work together to create this big impact. And that's also the idea behind the integrated approach, that you need both approaches. Okay. Then, of course, when we're talking about cycling, we should also think about intermodality. What you see here is the bike racks on the buses in Funchal on Madeira. In Čečínek in the Czech Republic, they made this combination of water transport and cycling, because they have a very large lake. I'm not even trying to pronounce the name of it, you can see it on the screen. But they developed this water transport system with water taxis and water buses, or water trams. And they had several stops on the shores of the lake. And at those points, at those stops, you had bicycle rental points and rickshaw services as well. So you can see the rickshaw on the photo on the screen. So I think that's also a very smart integration of two different modes. La Rochelle, they really worked on this one brand for sustainable mobility, and they integrated their bike sharing system into this brand. It's called Yellow. You can see it on the middle picture. And they also have this one smart card where you can that you can use to pay for all of these modes. They also have a bike sharing station at their park and ride side so that you can easily make the change. And they have a bike bus, you can see it on the left picture, with separate compartments for bikes. So where in Funchal the bikes are at the back of the bus on the outside, here you have kind of a room in your bus where you can place the bikes. Currently in CIVITAS, Brno in the Czech Republic is also working on a bike on bus system, because just like Funchal in Madeira, they have a very hilly landscape. So yeah, if you want people cycling, you have to take into account that they don't want to cycle the whole route on the hilly parts as well. So, and then in Malaga, I told you earlier that they implemented this bike sharing system. Their bike sharing system is operated by the municipal public transport company. So obviously what they did was they already have a smart card system for the buses. You can use the same smart card to pay for the bike sharing system. So that's obviously such an integrated approach lowers the barriers to use the system. Then, of course, intermodality can be quite complex. So in order for people to easily switch modes, yeah, they really have to know where to switch. They have to know the different modes that are available. So what they did in Palma in Spain, they developed a Mobi Palma app, and it integrates different elements of real-time information. So you can see the availability of the public bicycles, but at the same time, you can also check the parking information, traffic information on the road, public transport information. And they have a real multimodal route planner. So this route planner can actually say, okay, take the bus to there and hop on one of the shared bikes for the last mile. So that's also very important, that you don't have to figure out everything yourself, but that you have an app to figure it out. This app is integrated with Facebook, with Twitter, and it also has a mobile payment function so that you can use the app also to pay for your trip. Obviously, it makes everything much smoother, much easier. Stuttgart is also a current CIVITAS project. They are offering mobility management assessments for companies. So I put it under intermodality because it also considers all the modes. They try to promote bike sharing and pedelec sharing to the companies, obviously, but also other modes, like they have this special job tickets for employees who want to use the bus for their commute. They've organized 2 mobility congresses with employers, and they also have this online information tool with up-to-date routing information for all the modes around 2 major construction sites. So there are 2 sites where a lot of work are going on right now, and well, from one day to the next, a certain route can be blocked because they have started new works. So people constantly need to figure out, okay, if I'm on foot, how do I have to go today? Okay, can bikes still pass that way, or should we now take a different route to go around the construction site? So they've developed a tool to make this very accessible and very up to date. And then very, very short, we've talked about mobility management. We can also try to upgrade our network. We've already discussed it a little bit. Here are just some examples from very simple road markings in Debrecen in Hungary to a cycling street in Ghent where cyclists have priority over the cars. They can really cycle in the middle of the road there. Superblocks in Vitoria-Gasteiz, where car and public transport traffic is limited to the outer roads of a block, and inside a block is reserved for cyclists and pedestrians. And green arteries in Tel Aviv, also current CIVITAS project, where you really have these separate cycle lanes. Of course, you can also think about additional comfort for cyclists, bike pumps in the streets, a green wave, where if you travel at a certain speed, you will always have a green light. And then, of course, you should also think about bike parking. Where can people safely store their bikes? And if they're willing to pay for it, you can actually put some bicycle bins in areas where people don't really have a room in their house to store their bike. Okay. So to conclude, Odense in Denmark has been national cycle city of Denmark, and they have made this brochure with some tips on how you can really work towards the same good results that they have attained. And they think the key actions to maintain their high number of cyclists have been to insist. I already said it, it takes a lot of time to change behavior, so keep on campaigning, keep on working on it, focus on the important target groups, keep conducting campaigns. So I think this is actually vital to increasing cycling levels. And of course, yeah, continue to develop your services and the comfort of cyclists. So if you want to learn more about cycling in CIVITAS, there are a lot of publications. So you see here the one on sharing in CIVITAS Dynamo that I showed you in the very beginning. You see the brochure from Odense where they explain their experiences on cycling. And then, yeah, we have a lot of lessons learned brochures, policy advice notes. We have a CIVITAS measure directory where you can find a very short summary of every measure that has been conducted in the first 10 years of CIVITAS. And we also have e-courses, and there is one about bike sharing. There's also one about mobility management. So if you go to the CIVITAS website, you are able to follow them for free.
Okay.
So, any more questions?
Okay, thanks for the second part of your presentation. And question by René, he says, nice campaigns. How do you make the shift to cycling sustainable so that people keep on cycling on a personal scale?
Yeah. So I think I already said it when we talked about Ghent. So you have to, once in a while, you have to reward the people that are already cycling. That doesn't always mean that you have to hand out gifts. You could also try and recruit these convinced cyclists to help you as a sort of ambassadors of your campaign, so that really acknowledges them in their experience and in their contribution. So you could recruit them to spread your campaign message, to help in your actions. I think public involvement, so citizen participation, can also be this kind of reward. So if you really ask cyclists' opinions and let them contribute to your project, I think they will also be motivated to keep on cycling. Making cycling very visible in the streetscape. So we've talked about these bike counters, the cycle chic posters. So I think, these little signs that you really value the cyclists and their contribution. And of course, you have to keep on improving your service. Think about additional bike racks, the bike pumps, yeah, everything that can make the cyclist feel that he's being taken care of.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things.
Absolutely, always. It always is.
With everything.
Yeah.
And Mario asked, it's always hard to monitor the direct or indirect effects of a campaign. Do you have any examples?
Yeah. I must say, for most of the CIVITAS campaigns, they are evaluated in terms of user feedback, like how did they appreciate the campaign, how did they like it, did they see it? So it's really the basic levels of evaluation there. But I think, for campaigns, it's a problem that we should focus so much on hard evidence of impact, because sometimes, well, behavior change is not a matter of I was not cycling and because of the campaign now I will be cycling. You have different stages of behavior change. People move from not caring at all to realizing that there is an environmental problem or a congestion problem, or even for themselves a health problem. Then they formulate an intention, I should do something about it. Then they start thinking about an alternative. Maybe I should try cycling to work. Maybe I can start with 1 day a week. Then they're actually going to try it out. Then they're going to evaluate it and probably, hopefully, sustain that and make it into a new habit. Yeah. But you see, these are all these different stages, and a campaign might bring someone from a very early stage to a next stage. It won't show in the impact of your campaign. You won't have converted that person from a non-cyclist to a cyclist, but you will have made a change. And over time, all these different campaigns, all these different aspects will get people further and further and further in this behavior change program until they actually start making the behavior. But yeah, I think it's a problem also because campaigns work in interaction with other measures. It's very hard to evaluate them separately.
Okay, and then the final question from Paula Ruoff. She says, do you have figures for how many people are using the app in Palma and how many mobile payments have taken place?
I don't, but for the remainder of the question, no, it's a different question. Yeah. No, but I can make sure that I send you the link to the contact person in Palma who can tell you more about it.
If you send the link to me, then I will make sure that every attendee or participant is going to get the link. And also the second part of the question of Paula, would you be able to post a link to the publication resources? Give me all the links and I will make sure that everybody will get it. I think that's the best idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see it is 1:30 now. So webinar time is over. I would like to thank you very much, Sarah, for your interesting presentation and story. I thank all the participants for asking questions, for being here, for listening to you. And of course, I hope to see you at another webinar of allinx. And I wish you a very nice day. So,
okay, thank you.
And stay online for a few seconds because we're going to ask you some feedback questions.